and welcome to the Pikku Kimalainen Knitting Podcast. My name is Rachel Mariama, and I am your host, and I upload this podcast whenever I feel like, which is every 6 months, it seems like. I've just had a very busy life for the past 3 years, and things are finally starting to calm down, it seems. So, yeah. You can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as Pikku Kimalainen, and same on YouTube. It's been a while since I've done an intro, so they're always so bumpy because I go so long in between episodes, but that's where you can find me. I do have a Ravelry page. It's not that active, but I do read every response, and I have a little groups tab open where you can introduce yourself and fill out a little questionnaire, just because I know I enjoy that. And sometimes find it difficult to introduce myself to groups, so it's always fun to see people's responses to silly little questions. But yeah, that's where you can find me. I'll have it linked all down below. And anyways, I guess we can talk about knitting. I haven't been getting as much knitting done as I've wanted to, just because I'm so busy with work. I just completed my first year as a apprentice beekeeper, and it's kind of like trying to drink from a fire hydrant. There's a lot of information to take in, and all the while you're getting like stung by bees and you're sweating profusely and you're just out in the elements, and it's a lot of fun. So yeah, a lot of stuff has been going on, but a lot of knitting has been going on when I have the time. I've got a big old pile of finished objects, and I'm going to try and talk as fast as I can because it looks like the light is leaving me. It's been raining on and off, so I'm not sure how much time I have, but hopefully I can go through this stuff fast enough to make the light last. So I should stop jabbering and just start talking about my works in progress. So this is a project that I've been working on very recently. I probably cast it on last week. Ooh, looks like the light is really leaving me now. There's a huge cloud outside, so I'm sorry if the light jumps. I've been saving up for some box lights, so I can kind of normalize the situation and hopefully be able to record with when it's darker out, but I think it might be a little while just because I don't want to order anything through the post. Like, I don't want to order anything that would have to be shipped to me because the post office, with the current circumstances, is very, very busy. And so anyways, this is my throwback cardigan. I've got my notes here. My throwback cardigan that was designed by Andrea Mowry. And this is what it looks like so far. I'm knitting this out of a lot of scraps, and I apologize if I don't have a lot of information on the yarns I use. I tend to recycle a lot of yarns from old thrifted sweaters, and typically the brand of yarn doesn't really matter to me as long as I'm knitting with wool I love the texture of. I'm not really attracted to superwash yarns, but I have included them in my knits. And if you haven't noticed, I added a little extra fun to the bottom. This is right where the yoke ends and the sleeves begin. I added some baubles just for a little extra texture, and I think it's going to look really cute once it's finished. I am sort of striping in a bunch of different yarns, so if you can't tell, it does kind of have a bit of a stripy effect towards the bottom just because I'm using two different creamy colored yarns that aren't quite the same color. I'm trying my best to avoid the stripiness, but I think once it blocks out, it will look a lot better. So for the yarns I used, the white yarn is a recycled yarn that I got from a thrifted sweater. I just unraveled it and held it double with a strand of Holstgarn Super Soft. I really like holding Holstgarn double with a lot of the yarns that I repurpose, just because it's one extra strand that typically is complete and isn't broken anywhere, because you are going to get broken threads when you unravel a sweater, and it just, I think, reinforces it a little bit and helps the texture smooth out, because sometimes when you're using repurposed yarns it can get a little lumpy. Towards the bottom, the knit is a little more lumpy than usual, just because I am knitting from a failed sweater project. This is my Ursa sweater by Jacqueline. Ooh, I'm blanking on her last name. I know it starts with a C, but I tried knitting the Ursa sweater twice and I just found it, I don't think it was the shape for me. I might try knitting it again, this time without the V-neck, just because I don't wear a lot of V-neck stuff. And I also ended up knitting this a little too small because I'm a very impatient person and tend to not check my gauge unless I'm doing a test knit. So it was mostly my fault why I didn't like the fit of the sweater. Well, it was all my fault. So since I'm knitting straight from the sweater, the yarn is a little ramen noodly. And it looks a little lumpy, and I'm also knitting with some of my handspun yarn that I got from a raw fleece from one of my coworkers. And so I've been slowly processing that. It is Shropshire, I believe, and the fibers are a little short, so it is kind of difficult to spin it up without getting a lot of lumps in it. So if you see a lump, that's probably some of that short fiber. But I think maybe the lumpiness will go good with my baubles. At least I'm hoping. This cardigan was kind of impulse cast on because I'm knitting another sweater, the Celeste pullover by, Sorry Norland. And for the colorwork section, I used lettlopi, and it's sort of a tan color, but sometimes I feel like it looks a lot more peachy. And then I'm using some of my hand spun yarn held double with a strand of mohair, and then I'm using some brown scrap yarn from a skein of knit picks, and I can't remember what the line of wool was called, but it was non-superwash. I'm pretty sure it was Knit Picks Just Wool or Bare Wool, something like that. But it was all non-superwash, the wool that I ordered, and they just had natural colors, and it was very beautiful. And I've always got a soft spot for Knit Picks, just because I've been using them since I started knitting. They have a lot of really affordable yarns, and they'll always have a really warm spot in my heart. So I just moved on to the ribbing in this sweater, and soon I will cast on the neckline. I believe that's the next step, and then knit the sleeves. If I don't have enough white yarn for the sleeves, I'm just going to knit in a different color. I'm not sure yet. I hope I don't have to do that because I'm really liking the plain white background for the baubles to pop off of and the color work to really shine. right now it's kind of bunched up on the needles, so I'll put that down and hopefully I'll have more to say about it once it's a bit more open and not scrunched up on a wire. The next thing I have to talk about is my Celeste pullover. And I ordered some yarn from my local yarn store. It's in a neighboring town but in the same county. And it's the Dublin Bay Knitting Company in Anaconda, Montana. I really love Dublin Bay because they carry a lot of natural non-superwash yarns like Jameson's and lettlopi. But before the shutdown began, I really wanted to help support them. So I ordered some yarn online, and I ordered a sweaters quantity of Studio Donegal. This is what it looks like in the skein. It's in the oatmeal colorway. And let's see. Oh, why did they cover it up with a... It's 100% merino wool. I'm sorry, my allergies are really driving me nuts. I'm very allergic to pollen, and every day I work in pollen, and I just took a Benadryl before I started, so hopefully I don't sound too loopy. I'm trying to get this done before I get sleepy. But if I cough or sneeze, it's just my allergies acting up. So this is a 2-ply yarn, and there's 210 yards in a skein. And I ordered this specifically for this sweater. I was freaking out online when I saw this sweater because it's just Bobble City, and it is so beautiful. It's got a lace yoke, and it kind of has this flower petal design that goes down, and it's just covered in baubles, and I love it. But again, this takes, it's not a difficult chart to read. I did find that when I started out, I had to mark my stitches with stitch markers like every 10 stitches. Or yeah, I believe that's what I did, just so I could keep track of where my stitches were, and if like my stitch count was off in one section, then I knew that I did something wrong in the setup row. I always do that for sweaters that I know are going to be a little tricky, but once you get set up, it's smooth sailing. But I'm sorry, the light's crazy. But I would not watch TV and knit this because I definitely would make a mistake on it. Right now the collar's a little big. I believe I'm going to be folding it down later on in the pattern. I kind of stopped knitting this. I started knitting my throwback sweater or cardigan. Yeah. Because I wanted to knit on something. I just didn't want to think about it. And that's okay. She'll have her time. So yeah, that's my Celeste pullover. Not much to say about it yet, but I am very excited. Well, we're not really hosting a knit-a-lot, but I'm knitting this with my friend Pass the Yarn on Instagram, and we've both been kind of fawning over this sweater, so I think we both took a break on the yoke just because it takes a lot of brain power. But I think once I finish my throwback, I will finally be ready to start on that again. What else am I working on? I think the only other work in progress is my crochet blanket. If there's a lot of jump cuts because I sneezed or sniffled and just don't want to gross you guys out. But I've been like that for the past year or so because I'm just always around stuff I'm allergic to now. But this is my crochet blanket. And I am loving it. I was really inspired by Tipsy Tessie on Instagram. This is the first crochet project that I've ever tackled. Usually, I'm not really a crochet person just because like the tension and I don't know, the stitches don't quite make sense in my head, but I've always admired the textures that you can achieve with crochet. So I decided just to do a really simple granny square and then stitch them together in these cute little flower patterns. And yeah, it's all scrappy yarn that I'm using. So this is using up all of my darker scraps, and my lighter scraps are going into my beekeeper's quilt. The background color I'm using is, hold on, it's over here. This, and I think I might have to frog back or unstitch everything because this is all that I have left of the background color, and it's out of stock online. And I believe this is a Hobby Lobby line of yarn, and I don't think I want to purchase anything from Hobby Lobby given their current response to the pandemic. I don't think they were doing everything they could do to take care of their employees, so I think this will be just another little flower pattern in my quilt, because I'm pretty sure this yarn is very specific to Hobby Lobby. It is the I Love This Wool. It has a really cheesy purple label on it. But it's I Love This Wool Naturals in the Toasted Almond colorway, and it is sold out. So I think I will be unpicking my blanket and using a different background color because I do want it to be uniform, but I don't think I can support Hobby Lobby by purchasing any more of that yarn if it did get restocked. But that's all right. I will find a different background color for my quilt, or Afghan, not my quilt. I'm so used to talking about my scrappy blanket projects and referring to my beekeeper's quilt, so that might slip out every once in a while. But I believe, well, let me show you some squares. I'm all over the place. But these are some of my squares. I'm just stitching them together as I get enough colors. But yeah, I'm either using worsted weight yarn to crochet these, or 2 pieces of fingering weight yarn held double. And I will leave a link to the tutorial that I used for these granny squares down below. They're really easy to remember because you kind of crochet them in increments of 3. And 3 is my favorite number, so it's really easy to remember for me. Here's another one. I haven't woven in the ends on this yet. All knit from scrappy yarns. And I can't wait for it to be finished. I think I'm gonna call this maybe my granite blanket, or like maybe call it my ghost stories blanket, because the way it's crocheting up, it just kind of reminds me of a really cozy cabin or sitting around a campfire. But we'll see. I don't know. I think maybe the mood might change once I change the background color. I do think though that I'm still going to go for a very marled yarn for the background. So yeah, that is it for my works in progress. Now for finished objects. So I have a lot of finished objects to talk about. They're all stacked up here. I did have some coffee before the episode to try and counteract the effects of the Benadryl I took for my allergies. so I might be a little on edge. Anyways, these are my Patronus mittens, and they are a pattern, a free pattern by Randall. You're on my notebook. Come here. Let's see. They are a free pattern by Amanda Knits, and I can't remember what gauge they're supposed to be knit at. Of course I don't. But I think I knit them a little bit too big. I should have gone a needle size down, maybe to a US size 1. I think that would have worked for me. But they do have a little bit of extra space in the tops of them. If you can't see that, just a little, they're a little floppy, but I keep these in my car just for scraping the snow off of my car in the winter. I knit these out of some of my handspun yarn and some recycled yarn from an old sweater. The handspun yarn is the darker color, held together with some Holstgarn Super Soft, and then the lighter color is some recycled sweater yarn held together with a strand of mohair. And I did end up felting these in the dryer just to get them to be a little bit more snug. And I think these are just going to be really good walking mittens. And yeah, that's the front of them. Very cute. I don't know if you can see my mistake, but I accidentally knit 2 right-hand mittens. So if you look here, there is a lonely little thumb hole. I ended up frogging back this thumb, or that thumb, and Kitchener stitching that hole together, and then steeking another thumb hole and knitting a thumb up, and it worked pretty well. I'm pretty proud of myself. I was heartbroken when I had figured out that I had knit 2 right-hand mittens, but I knew I definitely wasn't going to frog all the way back down to fix it. And these were knit a while ago. These were knit in the winter when I really needed a warm pair of gloves. And I can't wait to knit more. There's a really cute Latvian braid on the bottom. And I think this is the first Latvian braid that I've ever done. And they are so easy. I don't know why that stitch scared me at all. And now I'm addicted. I think I'm going to be knitting a lot more Latvian braids in the future. So Patronus mittens, they are a free pattern on Ravelry. I highly recommend the pattern. Next finished object. These are the Tender Socks by Melody Hoffman, and they're held, it is a Farmer's Daughter Fibers Sock Squad colorway. I can't remember which month this specific color of yarn was. January, February. I believe it was the February month subscription. But anyways, I subscribe to Farmer's Daughter Fibers Sock Squad, and I get a skein of yarn every month for knitting socks. And I'm not sure if it was a good idea for me, just because I'm I don't knit with a lot of colors. I feel like the sun is going crazy. I'm so sorry. I don't knit with a lot of colors, and a lot of the colors I think are a little bit too colorful for my taste, but all of the yarn is very beautiful, so I've been using it to swap with other people who might be looking for a pop of color in their life. I actually have 2 skeins right beside me that I am looking to swap once everything reaches a certain point of what we can call normal. So I won't be swapping yarn for a while, just so I don't have to go out and ship anything, and nobody else has to go out and ship anything. But yeah, this is my tender socks, or these are my tender socks, and it's a really beautiful simple pattern. This pattern was part of the Simple Sock Collective by Melody Hoffman, and I really enjoyed knitting these socks. The pattern was easy to follow. I really love the mohair combination with that texture. It's such a cute little texture, and I definitely want to knit another pair of these in the future. I think this is a really fun texture to have if you're just looking for something mindless but still has a little bit of fun to it. And these are my bed socks just because mohair is very hot for me and my feet, and they're really good for winter, because in the winter we're scraping wax off of hives and making nukes, which are boxes for new colonies in the spring. So these are good for my boots when I'm just standing around in the warehouse on the concrete, because my feet do get very cold. I wouldn't say this is a summer sock. I also like wearing these to bed because they're very cozy. But yeah, Tender Socks by Melody Hoffman. Another finished object talked about. I feel like I'm rushing through them, but I have a lot to talk about and the sun is trying to leave, so I'm going through them quite quickly. My next finished object, I still have to put pockets on it. Not that pockets are included in the pattern, but yeah, this is my Ridari sweater. It's really hard to pronounce that, especially since my nose is so stuffy right now with my allergies. But yeah, this is a sweater pattern, and I just used all scrappy yarns, or not necessarily scrappy yarns, but yarns that didn't have a home in my stash or didn't have a specific plan. I find I really enjoy knitting colorwork patterns because it's easier to shop your stash and find yarns for a sweater. I do a lot of combining of different bases and weights of yarn, so typically when I look for colorwork patterns— oh, hello Grendel. Oh, he's feeling really sassy because he got outside today. When I'm combining different bases and weights, I typically will look for a pattern that calls for Aran weight or worsted weight, just because that opens up my options a bit more for kind of a restricted stash. So I can hold together 2 threads of fingering weight yarn and maybe a thread of mohair and achieve a worsted to Aran weight yarn with that. And then of course I can use other worsted and Aran weight yarns in my stash that I tend to, you know, buy at the yarn shops just to see how they knit up. So I'm going to try and go through all the yarns I used, but I used a ton of different yarns in this. This is a recycled yarn, this black color. It is Knit Picks Wool of the Andies Tweed, and this came from my bohem sweater. I found that sweater was just way too tight around my arms, and I just, even the shirt is kind of pushing the envelope for me. I can't stand having tight things around my arms, but if they're cute, usually I'll wear them for a few hours just to feel sassy. And then this color is actually a leftover yarn from my Favo test knit. And then for the sleeves, I knit the sleeves in a totally different color. And here you can see how I kind of modified the colorwork chart so it fit in with the body a bit more. And this is some Alafos Lopi, and I had just enough for 2 sleeves and then enough for the colorwork chart that I sort of spliced in to add some more length to my cardigan. Let's see, the black colors are again that Knit Picks yarn from my recycled sweater, and that white color is also from a thrifted sweater that I stole some yarn from, or harvested some yarn from. And then these colors, this gray color is from some Holst Garden Super Soft that I held double along with a fingering weight yarn that I used to knit up socks when I first started knitting. And so this thing ate up a ton of yarn out of my stash, and I feel very happy about it because I basically knit this for under $15 or $10 for the body. That is also sort of a scrappy body. It's not just one color or base of yarn. I mixed in a whole bunch of similar colors, so it gave it kind of a tweedy, marled effect. I have some leftovers from my knit picks, some leftover yarn from other thrifted and recycled sweaters, just a lot of stuff marled in, and I don't remember all of it, but it worked. It blocked out beautifully, and it grew a little bit. It almost goes down to my knees. It's kind of like a robe in a way. And I'm just so happy with this because I knit it out of all scrappy materials, and I just feel so proud knowing that I harvested all that yarn, yarn from older sweaters, and gave it a new home, and it just makes the story of this sweater so much more interesting and fun. And I hope maybe this inspires some people to harvest yarn from sweaters, because you can knit a lot of things for not a lot of money, and it opens up options. I know for me, with a kind of a smaller budget, it definitely makes me able to knit more things that I want to knit. But yeah, I really love the rolled hem. So you do a couple of knit rows, and then you knit ribbing, and it kind of creates this little folded over edge. I did kind of find it a little funky when I tried to steek. I ended up folding this over and then picking up through 2 layers of knitting, or I ended up picking up 2 stitches, just so I could grab that other end of the knitting. And since it was such a scrappy sweater and I wasn't entirely sure about the fiber content in some of the yarns, I ended up machine knitting through my steeking area before I actually cut the fabric, just to make sure all the threads were really nice and secure. Toothier fibers will just hold on their own because they sort of grab onto each other, but since I wasn't sure about whether some of the yarns were superwash treated in this sweater or not, I decided I should play it safe and just sew through it, and then block it out, of course, before I'm sewed through the sweater with a machine, because if it is superwash, it's going to grow, and then I'd probably get the situation where the ribbing for the neckline is like this, and then the sweater kind of grows down from that because the thread from sewing it is holding it in place. My Rirari cardigan finished. I just gotta knit it some pockets and make it like the most ultimate cozy cardigan in the world. It keeps me very warm. The next thing I have to talk about, my Favo test knit by Fiber Tales. This was a sweater designed by Larka from Fiber Tales, and when I saw this sweater, I freaked out. This is a cabled sweater with these beautiful cable on it. It's so chunky and fun to make. I enjoyed making this sweater so much, and then it's got this amazing back panel, and again you have that super fun cable going down and this negative space in the middle. And when I saw this sweater, it was like the perfect storm. It's got negative space, it's got bobbles, it's got honeycomb brioche. It's got everything. It's got all the things that I love, and it's cropped. And because of how the cables interact with the honeycomb brioche, the fabric kind of stretches and rests in different ways because of how the stitches are being pulled. So you get this really lovely dip in the hem. And I'm definitely going to put another one on my needles as soon as I can manage. I really enjoyed knitting this pattern. I was so excited when Larka decided I could be a test knitter. There's so many things to say about this sweater, and it's been so long. I wish I would have recorded sooner. Yeah, this is just a beautiful thing to test knit. I really flew through the pattern. Yeah, it's just really easy to follow. The one thing I would say about these two stitches here, to make this, you are going to end up unraveling some stitches all the way down to the base and then re-knitting them up. Don't be scared. It's really, really simple and easy. It's amazing, and I'm definitely going to be including this cable in future sweaters. So this is knit with Knit Picks Wool of the Andes Tweed. I can't remember the colorway. It's on my Ravelry page. If I ever do a test knit, I do a gauge swatch, and I do upload a Ravelry pattern page for it. I know I ended up getting gauge with, I had to go one needle size up because I am a tight knitter. So I believe I got gauge with the US size 9. But yeah, it's so beautiful. I think I want to knit a white one or maybe a cream colored one. Here, put him back up here since he's in a snuggling mood. Oh, he's like, no, dude. You want on your chair? Ooh, sorry, the camera turned off. But what was I saying about this sweater? I really loved the construction. It is a seamed sweater. So it's knit in pieces, and then you stitch it all together, and then you pick up stitches for the neckline and fold it over and sew it down. This sweater is so squishy because of this honeycomb brioche, and I learned so much from just knitting this pattern, just learning all of the different stitches and cables, and it was really enriching. But yeah, I only have good things to say about this sweater. I think I'll include a video of me wearing it, just so I don't have to get up. And I think when I knit my next one, I might knit it with a little bit more length, and just have this really huge, cozy, not really a fisherman's sweater, but a really huge cozy sweater, and maybe a creamy or white colorway, maybe even black, but I think that might be a little tricky with the honeycomb brioche. Might be kind of hard to see the yarn. So that was my Favo sweater by Fiber Tales. I really enjoyed test knitting it, and it's live on Ravelry. It's been live for a while. She just came out with this shawl. I'm really wanting to cast it on. It is, she talked about it a little bit on her podcast, but it's a triangular colorwork shawl. It's so beautiful. And I remember seeing photos of this shawl and thinking, oh, that looks like a lot of purling and colorwork, which is not something I enjoy. But she just came out with her podcast episode talking about the construction method for the shawl, and it's steeked. So you knit it in the round and then steek it, and that's just such a genius way to knit something. I was blown away, and as soon as I finish my 2 sweaters, I'm casting that on right away. It took all my willpower not to just raid my stash and cast on as soon as it went live. but I don't want to get too much stuff on my plate and then forget where I was on certain projects. That is something I'm really trying to work on this year. But yeah, once I finish my 2 sweaters, that will be the next thing on my needles. And this was one of the longest works in progress that I've had. I've probably been working on this for a few years. I started knitting this in Nashville when I lived there temporarily. And this is my Guthrie sweater by Caitlin Hunter. It's so beautiful. I used a lot of scraps for this sweater too. Even the background color is 2 different kinds of yarns from older projects combined. These were leftovers from my bohem sweater before I decided to frog it back, and leftovers of a gray superwash yarn that I had when I first started knitting. I knit my mom a cardigan, and I really wanted to finish this because this sweater has been on a very long journey with me back and forth between Montana and Nashville. So yeah, this sweater has traveled probably maybe 6,000 miles, a little bit more, just in being worked on. Before I moved back home, I was traveling up to Montana a couple times to help take care of my mom when she got her surgery for breast cancer. So this was a really important project for me, and I really wanted to finish it. All of the yarns I used are kind of novelty indie dyed skeins. Not really novelty yarns, but little yarns I'd pick up here and there to remember an event like SSK, or yarns that I got from a friend. So this is a really special sweater for me, and I'm really happy it's finally finished. It did keep me very warm this winter. And ooh, it's so beautiful. I considered dyeing over a yarn, and now I'm thinking, why did I even think about doing that? It's gorgeous the way it is. So this was a yarn my mom gifted to me. I can't remember the brand, but it was a little too stark and cool colored for me, so I dyed over it with some onion skins. This is a yarn that I got from Akara Yarns. She had like a, I don't want to call it a one pot wonder, but just sort of a experiment color skein. And I really loved it when I was in her Etsy shop, so I added it to my cart. It's like this very light blue, like a really light sky blue, mixed in with these pops of neon pink speckles. This is 2 pieces of fingering weight yarn held together to make a worsted weight, and these are just from some old socks that I knit, scraps from socks. Let's see, is there anything else in here? This is yarn from a sweater that I thrifted and then frogged back. And this is some woolen boon that I got from, I got it from, oh, House of Yarn in Nashville, in Tennessee. So that's my little Nashville skein that I will remember Nashville by. I did not like living there. There was way too many people, and it was really hot. But yeah, it's very beautiful. And that is it for this sweater. It was my last, oldest cast on ever. I probably have been working on this at least for 2 years, somewhere around there. Not 2 years, but somewhere around that, maybe 3. I can't remember. I cast this on when I moved to Nashville, and I feel like time's been moving by so fast. Yeah, and this is my last finished object. This is the Stoker shawl by Kristen of Woolen Vine. Oh, it's very beautiful. I think I made the tassels a little too big, but I'm okay with that. I love big tassels. It just makes it more cozy, honestly. Look at that beautiful lace panel. I love lace, but I hate knitting lace. That lace kind of had smoke coming out of my ears. But yeah, this was knit out of that Knit Picks yarn that I used the leftovers for in my Rirari cardigan. And yeah, this shawl is huge. It's ginormous. I believe it was a worsted weight yarn that I knit this out of from Knit Picks. And I just like wearing it like this with all three tassels up front. I finished knitting this when the bees came back from Montana, or back to Montana, once it started warming up, but it was still really, really cold at night. And nighttime is when we like move the bees around because they're all in their hive. They're not out flying around gathering pollen, and typically you can just smoke them and they'll stay in their hives on the truck, so you can move them from location to location, whatever has more flowers or, you know, might have more food for them. But I found these tassels. I kept zipping them up into my bee suit because I wear my bee suit like over my clothes if it was cold. Not that you really have to wear a bee suit at night, just a veil if they're really not happy. But I would like zip these tassels up, or if I didn't wear my bee suit, I'd end up like shutting these into a hive once I picked it up, and I'd like get my shawl stuck in the hive and I'd take these out and there'd be bees in the tassels. That didn't happen a lot, but it happened maybe once and it was very memorable. But yeah, this shawl has a lot of memory and a lot of mileage on it already, and it makes me very happy. And yeah, this is my favorite shawl that I've knit. Well, I think my Severus Snape shawl, Illusion shawl, is my favorite shawl, just because if I know I'm going somewhere where I'm not going to be talking a lot, that's kind of a fun icebreaker. Hello. Just because I can show them the magic trick of the face moving around. But I find this one's a lot more wearable with my other pieces of clothing, just because it is one color and it's a lot more subtle. The Illusion shawl is very stripy, so I find that I can't match it with other things as well. I typically will just wear it with my flannel and like some Carhartt jeans and my big old like jean jacket for work, which is what I'm usually wearing with like a greasy hair bun and gas station coffee. So right now it feels really good to be a little dressed up. I don't really have opportunities to dress up anymore, so it feels really good when I do. I kind of live on a hill, and when it rains it gets super muddy, so I can't, even if I'm wearing fancy clothes, I still have to have these big, huge, like gigantic boots on to get around because it gets really muddy, and they haven't built stairs yet, which is very concerning. I really wish my apartment had stairs because we have to like climb up the hill to our door. My fiance just dug some stairs into the hill, and I was kind of worried my landlord wouldn't like that when she came up to us to talk about some paint on the walls, because like we still have some spots on the walls that don't match. So we're trying to fix that. But she used our stairs, so I think she's okay with it. She didn't say anything about them. But if she did, I probably would let her know that I slip a lot going down the hill, trying to get to my car, because there's like 2 different ways you can go and neither of them are a good option. And it's kind of hard to have visitors over, especially my mom and other people, just because it's so hard getting up the hill. I don't want them to fall. I don't know where that tangent came from, but anyways, this is my Stoker shawl. I purchased it when the forest fires were going on in Australia, and Kristen was so generous and amazing. She made her patterns I believe it was for a week where all of her pattern sales, I'm not sure about her yarn sales. I believe some of her yarn sales went into it as well, but she donated all of those sales to help with managing the forest fires in Australia. And so yeah, I took it as an opportunity to help out and get myself a really fun pattern. And it feels really good knowing that I helped a little bit, but that was just so amazing what she did. And it just makes me very happy and hopeful when I see things like that. And yeah, those are all my finished objects. Anyways, I think I'm gonna end it there. And I'll see you next time, whenever that is. It might be in 6 months, it might be in 2 weeks. Who knows? I don't have a schedule whatsoever. I just record when I feel like it, and that's okay because I've had other stuff going on in my life, and you know, knitting has been there to keep me comfortable, but on my day off I haven't felt like podcasting because I just want to knit. But yeah, you can find me as Pikku Kimalainen on Instagram and Ravelry. The light's pretty much gone now, and it looks like it's really foggy outside. It's been sleeting all day. Kind of weird weather. So it's gotten kind of dark. I'm Pikku Kimalainen on Ravelry and Instagram. Again, you can go to the groups tab there and introduce yourself. There's a little introductions questionnaire if you want to fill that out. It's a lot of fun. And I'll see you next time. Bye.